now we are talking about single-digit nanoseconds these days. Everything adds up to this.
Welcome to the Security Cocktail Hour. I'm Joe Patti.
And I'm Adam Roth.
Today, we have a great guest. We have Jatin Mannepalli. Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, honored to be here. Nice to be here.
The other guy, unfortunately, what he did was he made a misconfiguration of the firewall that cost or lost 13, 14 seconds of trading. And they literally just walked him out the door after that, says, you're done. And I'm like, if I understood correctly, it translated into millions of dollars lost in like 14 seconds. High frequency trading.
Like a second in a trading environment is almost like, let's say, an year of downtime. That's a lot of money. I mean, I was talking to my friend recently about how we try to shorten our time and bring like low latency as much as possible. And this is where it kind of gets tricky, right? Because when you're introducing like security controls or let's say even firewall, right? It kind of breaks things or it makes things really, really slow. And even like a microsecond of delay can cause like so much of losses. And then you have to kind of figure out what works where and where can you make that trade-off.
This is a perfect segue, right? I think, even myself including, right? We all understand high frequency trading from a layman's term, but maybe we should kind of describe that, right? What is high frequency trading? What does that really mean to somebody who's listening to this who wants to understand that?
I mean, high frequency, think of us like this. I mean, we are high frequency trading firms as well as market makers, right? So, who are we basically at the end of the day? So, basically, when you go on to your trading platform that you use, let's say Robinhood or another app, you go and see, oh, Apple today is trading at $500 or a stock or something. But who decides that it is $500? It's basically firms like us that basically get all this information from exchanges, see what is the trading volume based on the demand that various people are buying and selling. And based on that, each of these trading firms compete with each other to like see what is the most optimal price can I offer to the person who is trying to buy or sell them. And this has to be done at like really, really lightning speeds. Whichever trading firms offers the most optimal price, the lowest price wins. And I think all these firms like us, Jane Street, Citadel, we often compete with each other to make sure that we are providing the best price while making a fraction of it when somebody is trading on these stocks. If that answers your question.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's not, I mean, obviously, of course, I could always use a clarification and understanding because you think you know, but when you deal with somebody like you, then you kind of really know. So thank you.
Yeah,
Of
Jay,
course.
you're a little understated. I mean, it's like high frequency trading. It's like, yeah, it's a little faster. We got to be careful. I mean, this is the big money. This is the serious big money. I mean, like you said, these guys are making fractions of a penny, but millions of times a minute or whatever, or even faster. And this is big money. This is big stress. Like you said, it's 14 seconds of downtime costs millions of dollars. That's what we're talking about. This is the show.
Yeah, probably
I mean,
tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, and that's a good segue too, Joe. Right? So Jay, we talk often about people that do incident response and the stress beyond incident response, having to deal with people who've been ransomware, having to deal with the CEOs and everybody else is worried about their files. What does a stressful day look like to you, and how come you still have hair on your head?
Usually, on a stressful day, what does it look like? I mean, I've seen days when people are literally pulling their hair because their trading platforms are not working. And since their trading platforms are not working, or there is a downtime between various offices that we have, and various offices that we have exchange information in real time, and that has to be like super duper instant. So, and when that happens, we are literally everybody at the end of the day blames security. They're like, oh, there is something in the middle, so I'm sure security did something. And this is not just for like trading, but I've seen that happen with various other places as well. So when something breaks and people are like, oh, that must be a security control, or that must be somebody from security who must have done that. And then you're literally pulling your hair trying to understand what these systems were to begin with, because a lot of times these are super proprietary information or super proprietary systems, right? That you probably haven't seen much before in your previous places. But then you are trying to figure out how is the information flow working, how are various controls making it work, and who did this change, who probably might not be working anymore, and how do you fix this over a period of time. I remember when we had something called a ransomware, not here, but from previous places. It took us almost like 3 months to bring everything back online, and it was a nightmare.
Pain.
Making sure that all the systems are cleaned when before we bring them online, making sure that we put the right signatures in place. Do we have the right host intrusion detection and prevention system on all these systems that are coming back online? Do they have like proper access control? When you're expecting people in the office, is the office Wi-Fi clean? Are you giving them, are there the right controls in place to make sure that there are no worms on
So
the network
I
and
got my
whatnot?
next question, Jay. I'm sorry, I'm a kid in a candy store. So I work for a company and we provided kind of a sort of trading platform, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things that I was tasked for as the director of operations was to make sure my connections were diverse. And one of the things I've learned about, even in New York City, but this is 15 years ago at least, even in New York City, you can have 15, 20 different providers, internet providers, but at the end of the day, 18 of them might be, all going over the same last mile. So my goal was to always ask the provider, what is your last mile? And I would find out. And one of them, very popular location in New York City on 10th Avenue, we found out that the last mile majority was their copper or their fiber or their circuits. So you might have, I don't want to say names of companies, but like let's say you had ISPA and ISPB and ISPC, all three of them, even though they were different providers, they went over the last mile, which is provider D. So if that provider got cut, then you lost any of those other providers. So how does somebody like you make sure you have diverse connections to trade without having problems?
Wait, before you answer that, Jay, I got to give a little more history because what Adam's talking about is totally right, but it's from like 20 years ago.
Hmm.
When a lot of people, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but when a lot of people in trading in the financial markets discovered that, especially, well, obviously in New York, when they discovered they discovered that they didn't have that redundancy that they had were really going through the same fiber, through the same wire or anything, that happened for them on 9/11, which was
True too.
bad.
That's true.
Yeah, which was, and a lot of people who thought, oh, we're diverse, we're covered, it ended up they weren't. So there was a big change after that. And one of the things that was built was there was actually a financial network that was built specifically for a lot of trading, and it was fiber. Do you know the term dark fiber? You ever hear that one?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay, I know it's kind of old, but dark fiber just meant you had your own fiber. You weren't leasing it from anywhere. And it was the only way to be sure that your stuff really wasn't redundant. And that gets to what Adam is saying, because the way you've solved it now is really interesting, because fiber was the fastest, cleanest thing we had at the time. But how do things look now?
Yes, actually, that is a good segue, right? Because in the past, indeed, fiber was the fastest way. It certainly still is in certain contexts, but when you're talking about Earth in general, right? Everybody is fighting for, like you said, internet service providers, redundancies, and whatnot, and something breaks in the middle, and that kind of causes things. But now things have changed in the last few years, or at least since the time I've been here. Now we are talking about something called radio towers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are
Radio.
we
Isn't that crazy? They're doing radio. Man.
so the thing is, when you are transmitting information or transmitting data from point A to point B in an ideal world, you put a straight line and that solves the issue. But things are kind of variable here, right? When you're traveling from Chicago to, let's say, Tennessee, it's not a straight line. You will have like tunnels, water bodies, name it. And then you kind of add more turnarounds for this, and that reduces the speed. Even though optic fiber gives you what, two-thirds of the speed of light, and now that you are kind of going around mountains, water bodies, and whatnot, that even reduces the speed. So people were like, yeah, what can we do to reduce this speed? Now, people are doing radio towers to make sure that information is just going equally fast. It's not the speed of light, but at least it is more reliable these days. It is definitely able to like solve a lot of problems that people had in the past.
That is just amazing to me for a couple reasons because, like when I was in learning telecommunications back in the late 80s, they would talk about a lot of the engineers and all would talk about the old days of when data transmission was done by towers and stuff. And in fact, I lived close to Bell Labs here in New Jersey, where they did some of the first tests with like long range radio, but that had been dropped years ago. And they're like, no, you got to use fiber. Fiber's fast. It's got less latency. Just boom. And to hear that to get faster, you've gone back to radio is just wild to me.
So,
And
yeah.
and there's also the security of it. Own the fiber, it's very secure. I mean, what are you guys doing about security and over the air?
I mean, that is the problem with radio towers and radio waves, right? A lot of times you have to figure out how to encrypt that information because it's not encrypted. And that is a challenge a lot of people who work within trading are trying to make that work. How can we add encryption to these? How can we make sure that, I mean, a lot of times I think I've seen with one of my colleagues who works for a different company, they mentioned that there were people who were trying to add like jammers in the middle when there was a transmission of data, and because of that,
Yeah.
they had like a downtime of at least a couple of hours, and that was a huge loss for them.
Yeah,
So
Jay,
you were
I'm gonna
saying,
jump in because I get everything you're saying, and I've been involved in this, right? I mean, the problem with analog is you can't encrypt analog, but you can
yes.
use digital over radio waves. When you use digital over radio waves, there's a level of overhead. Even back after 9/11, I was doing FSO or free space optics, and what I was doing was I was shooting lasers from one building to another building when all the circuits went down because we had our own level. We had a BLECT or building local exchange carrier, and basically for people who don't know what a BLECT is, it's basically you're a telephone company in your building. You have all the infrastructure. You have these five ESS or these big switches, and you can do everything else. Even back then, we had DSLAMs or DSL multiplexes. DSL was an old type of service for those who don't know, but these days, people with Elon Musk and his own satellite services, it actually makes a really good backup. It might not be as high, as high speed, but there are new alternatives to everything, and that's one of the good things. But as far as going about jamming and signals, we have the same issue with drones. We have the
Hmm.
same issue with terrestrial connections into space. Space is one of the biggest domains now that's being pursued. I just went to a show or a conference at called GrayCon at Capital Tech University, and that's the big thing. Everybody's using satellites, thousands and thousands of satellites. And what I heard is even Russia moved their satellite into place and went right in between two satellites to stop the connectivity to satellites orbiting the Earth. So now we're in a new domain where people are intercepting or blocking signals in space now.
That's what was interesting because in the financial markets, we said we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to have private fiber. So everything's tight. You can even make a case that you don't need to encrypt it. It's so private. And it's hard to disrupt. You got to literally go into a manhole to go and disrupt it or mess with it. But now you're back out in the air, and you're right, Jake. I mean, it can be disrupted. You got to worry about denial of service at a scale you never had to worry about before. You got to obviously worry about. I mean, what about weather? I mean, isn't if you're shooting hundreds of miles, aren't there weather issues with that?
That could be an issue. I mean, the thing is, the when you talk about when you compare, I think that's a very good analogy that you mentioned here, Adam. That why not use satellites, right? And that's a very that's a thing to think about. So when you're talking about satellites, you're basically talking to like a satellite that's like miles and miles away. But when you're talking about like these radio towers, right? These are definitely not like thousands of miles away, but at least the way their setup is, we at least try to make sure that there is like some level of redundancy happening because at the end of the day, it's about latency. The more you try to reduce the latency, the better. I can definitely not say how much speed it is adding from what I remember. Because I had a coworker of mine who also was asking me, who was, hey, why don't we use satellites, or why not use that? Well, technically, yes, that is doable, but that will definitely add at least
Latency. Yeah, of
Yeah.
few
course.
microseconds. And given that now we are talking about single digit nanoseconds these days, everything adds up to this. And that's why we have
That
like a lot of these firms have like continuous radio towers, right? Each tower is like at least a few hundred miles away, probably. It is not known where they are, but yeah.
Well,
um,
that's the funny part, Jay, right? Any one of us, I don't care who it is, anybody listening to this, and I hope a lot of people listen to this. I hope the millions of people that will listen to this really enjoy this thing, the millions. But anyway, if you're driving down a street, a main street, anywhere you are in New York City, in Chicago, people tend to look up and go, "Oh, okay, look at all those towers. Those are the microwave towers for my cell phones." People don't realize that these landlords are getting ridiculous amounts of money to rent their roof rights to these companies to place their equipment on there. So it might not just be a microwave tower for your cell phone. It might be a tower for a proprietary connection for a corporation that needs to do a long haul connectivity from the end of one borough to another borough because they're doing it. It might be government. People don't realize how much government stuff is out there. And guess what? It's also on top of bridges. The top of bridges is some of the most highly technical locations, and people don't realize how much they're watched. Like government law enforcement agencies, they watch that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure going up, and people don't realize it. And thank God they don't know.
but
well,
but but what you said is right though, that hey, having like a Starlink satellite, right, or have a satellite that would make us as a security people life much easier. You don't have to worry about like data in transit or encryption or things like that, and that is everything that is covered. But hey, that's the trade-off a lot of these trading firms have to make sometimes as to security, or do we make more?
all right. So let's get into that because here's why this is interesting. This is kind of the punchline to a lot of this stuff. You've got to do super low latency. Low latency stuff's got to get there fast and everything. It's nuts. Huge volumes going very fast. Back when I was doing this, we were shooting for like latencies of like
Few
50
milliseconds.
microseconds,
Oh no,
and I told that to Jay and he kind of laughed at me. And what do you say you're doing now? Single digit nanoseconds? Like, oh. And but the idea was that, because it was so fast, at least by those days, there were a lot of things with security we couldn't do. You just couldn't do it. There was no firewalls couldn't keep up with it. There were no IDS. Getting an IDS to keep it up with it was very
well, that's always the
difficult.
issue, Joe, right?
Yeah.
Because as things started moving from hardware to software for firewalls, everything was always hardware. It was this chip and this and that, and then firewalls started inspecting the connections for things like malware and ransomware. It wasn't like that in the original. It was like, oh, is this TCP? Is this UDP? Is this port 554? Is this port 80? Things like that. But now it's like we're looking for like needles in the haystack. But here's the fun, and I know this is not what Jay does, but what Jay does from an infrastructure standpoint is just as important to people performing surgeries when one person is in, I don't know, Germany, and they're doing the surgery in New York. It's got to be low latency. It's got to be highly redundant. It's got to be nanoseconds. Because if that person's operating that robot and they lost a nanosecond or two, they might have snipped somebody's artery instead of cutting out that cancerous thing. I mean, I'm not an expert at that, but that's kind of like a very loose way to say it.
No, I think you're right. I think latency indeed is like it's very critical when it comes to like healthcare, financial markets, and it's just becoming more and more thanks to like all this developments and like AI and people building like GPU clusters. That is becoming more and more of a requirement these days that you try to send all your data that you can into your GPU clusters that you have, or if you have any one to begin with. And actually, funny story that you mentioned because you said in the past it was all about hardware. It still is about hardware. People are still sticking to hardware because a lot of times people have to create their own FPGAs. People have to set up their own hardware because without that hardware, you cannot like trade with high
So
frequency
you're doing
with
custom
low
built
latency.
hardware now
Yeah, yeah,
in
indeed.
trading.
I mean,
Wow, I didn't have
a lot
that
of firms
before.
do that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
But
know if you know,
custom
Jay.
chips too.
Yeah, just to say, Jay has about 50 to $100 million in stock in Nvidia. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Man.
If only. But indeed, I mean, that's the thing, right? When you have like custom hardware, I think this is something probably you guys have seen it too. So when it comes to custom hardware, and now we're talking about like what kind of software does these systems have? Is this custom built? Is this in-house? Or who is developing this? What kind of platform are they using? And that kind of creates a whole different can of worms. If it is in-house, usually, we normally consider that as safe, but again, these days with third party and malicious libraries that is out there. So we never know people who are developers who are using third party libraries using their Python or C++ coding, they could still be using like malicious software and like bringing in something on their FPGAs that could just cause another havoc. I have seen that happen a lot of times with other places where you are bringing in all these third party malware and that is causing a huge set of different set of problems.
Well, I've experienced that. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff with Python and a lot of other libraries and stuff lately, but I never thought about it to the point where you're doing so much custom stuff, down to the hardware and all. And it's like, even with the tremendous amount of money these firms have, they can't rewrite all the software from the bottom up. I mean, they got to be using stuff that's out there, right?
The thing is exactly what you said. These are like this code was created several years ago, and it is still using like libraries, custom libraries that were previously used several years ago. And this was an example that we saw that people often push new versions to these libraries, and without some of these versions will have malware on them, and it's intentional. Though this code has been around for like several years, it is still fine and it's still working, but since it is still using an old library, that is causing a different set of problems. Yeah, we kind of have to look at the code, make sure that now we have the right set of people who understand this, like static code scanners, and once the code is out there, even when we deploy things onto like things like Kubernetes, how does the container images look like? Yeah, it's wild out there.
So supply chain compromise is obviously nothing new, right? But like I hear stories, you don't have to be government contractors and the CIA and the NSA, but a lot of these companies, what they do, they obfuscate who they are. And what they do is they say to somebody, we need you to write this kind of code, but they don't say we're like a high frequency, trading platform. They're like, yeah, we need this for this and that. So they obfuscate who they are. They go out to an organization and they get the code written, but meanwhile, it's like a third party company that you never heard of. And it's no different from like feeding the president. The president has people that go out and shop for his food. And they're the nondescript people, and they go into supermarkets. They never go to the same supermarkets in the same amount of time. They go there, they buy the food, and then they bring the food back. It's the same thing with some of these companies. They go to different companies, they get code written, they tell them what they want. They don't tell them who it's for. They lie who it's for, so this way they can bring the code back, not worrying about somebody in Ukraine, somebody in India, somebody in China that's going to, because a lot of the coding platforms are there, and then they bring it back in and then they scrub it and clean it, and then they turn around and say, oh, yeah, it's fine. But they make sure never to really go to the same place twice in the same period of time. Does that sound right, or am I making that up?
No, you're right. That has been the
Oh,
case, and
don't tell him
that
he's
is.
right all the time. It becomes
Well, I just
impossible.
want to know whether or not I'm making it up.
I thought you were, but no, okay. Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you, this is really interesting because, I had thought, and I guess it's my, bias from where I've come from, that, some of the biggest challenges you had would be with speed and latency and even monitoring the traffic or being able to see it or control it. But man, the software issues, since you have this custom hardware now, I'm not going to ask you what you guys run. That would be unprofessional. I know you won't tell me, but I'm going to guess that, besides what people have to deal with now, like if you got a web application and you're using a lot of Python and they say, oh, there's a compromise in it, or someone got some bad code into Node.js or whatever the hell it is. You got a lot of stuff to do on your application. But I'm going to guess that you guys are probably not running custom operating systems, but using really tweaked stuff like versions of Linux or something where if you find out something you have has a problem, it ain't exactly like just getting a patch from the vendor and putting it on. It's way more complicated than that.
No, no, no. I mean, so let's think of it like this. So when you are having all these FPGAs and that you're building, they need some kind of an operating system to begin with, right? A lot of times, since you're building it yourself, it's not like the vendor is going to give you, or you can just go and purchase it online. Let's have like a Linux operating system on it or something. A lot of times you have to build the firmware yourself. A lot of times these firmware are made out of like C++ because that's the fastest programming, one of the fastest programming there is out there, along with C. So, and you are using all these libraries along with it, right? So that is why a lot of developers, what they do is they build this in-house to support these FPGAs to make it just like more faster and more faster. There's always like new version. They try to work on launching like new versions of it every now and then, and that is also a security risk within itself, right? Okay, you're tweaking a code. Okay, how does it look like now? What kind of issues does it translate into? In an ideal world for a company, say it would be web server. They'll launch something new, and that introduces a new malware. But in high frequency trading firm, what it could mean is you get a malware or something. It fries your chips. Basically, it has
Fries
happened.
the chips.
It
Oh,
can, it can. And
wow.
basically,
Because it
yeah, it
overheats
could
it,
be.
right?
Yeah, yeah, it
It's
overheats.
wild.
They do that on purpose. They purposely increase the consumption so that the power gets more intense. As it gets more intense, it fries it. So let me ask you a question, Jay. Do you guys ever feel like, I don't know if we're allowed to even ask this, that you're targets of nation states and other criminal organizations that because they know what's at stake, they can make money off you guys if they were able to, get insider information, poison the well, watering hole stuff. Do you guys look out for that?
I mean, we definitely have to keep up with what is happening out there, and thanks to a lot of meetups that happen. So a lot of times, what happens is a lot of these trading firms come together. They bring their own security leaders. They sit down together. And I like this that I probably have not seen this anywhere else, and I'm glad that something like this exists for high frequency trading firms. So a lot of like people like me or like other for other firms, they come together. They just kind of share what are the issues that they're seeing, what are the nation threat actors are they seeing in their environment. I think I've seen that happen with other firms. I think I'm not going to name, but there was one specific firm here in Chicago that had a really bad day. Basically, what happened was there was a new version for a specific library, and this version was barely there for like a couple of hours. By the time it was known, or the person who owned the library deleted it, but for those 2 hours, they had malware on their system. And when
Oh,
that happened,
on trading systems.
yeah, it was
That's
down for like
nightmarish.
almost 6 hours or so.
Do you guys
Uh,
use ISAC or no?
yes, yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question to ask. I don't think that's proprietary. When I went to this Capital Tech Raycon, I saw the most amazing thing I've ever seen. There was a space ISAC, but the space ISAC had a real command and control center. They had people staffed, what looked like NASA, I could
Those
have.
are always for show. Those are fake.
No, it
Come
was not
on.
for
You know
show.
that. Lots
No,
of
it was
vendors
not for
have
show.
that. And usually everyone's like in a closet
By the
and
way,
that's
that
the
person
real
might be a
one.
guest soon, so be nice.
I mean,
So,
you're right. I
yeah,
mean, usually, I think for us it is FSISEC, Financial Service ISEC. So I think we have, from what I think I've seen this with my previous workplace, which was also a financial industry. I think they do a good job of like sharing information. But when I say, and I think that's the limit of it. They share information, you talk to them, and they give their own insights that, so, hey, we are seeing this for these kind of financial institutions, so you should do X, Y, and Z, and they'll probably bring some of their customers just to get an idea. But when I say like high frequency trading firm, right, these are like a little bit more knitted community. It shouldn't be like this, but I guess since the business,
it should be though. Jay,
it,
wanna know why?
You know,
Because you guys are trusted. You're like family. And even though you might be competing with each other, it also behooves you to communicate. When Joe and I worked together, Jay, right? We did LSISAC, though Joe didn't give me really access to it. He wasn't a nice guy when I worked for him. But that being said, the LSISAC would give us information. These threats, these IPs, ingest this, do that. And it was really good for us because we learned a lot from people, even though there might be competitors. It's funny, right? It's like frenemies. We might be competing with each other for work, but those are the attorneys. But the people like us, the security people, we have to work together because if we don't work together, divided, we're nothing. Together, we conquer. So good stuff.
no, you're good. You're right. The way, I mean, the good thing is these days, with a lot of controls that are out there, like the intrusion detection prevention systems, they kind of get these feeds. If you mention it to them that, hey, we are a high frequency trading firm, or we are like a healthcare, kind of try to source this information directly from ISAC. I've seen that happen quite a lot of times. So you get this kind of information as to what should be blocked and what shouldn't be right away. But yeah, I mean, when you talk to these kind of coordinated communities, you kind of understand what kind of security strategy do they have, because they also face the similar challenge, right? Okay, speed versus security. What do we choose in a situation like this? I'm sure you saw this, person A. What do you have? What have you done when you had something of a similar situation? Or let's say you had a breach. How did you come up, or what kind of authorities did you have to notify? Because that is required by a lot of states, a lot of countries these days, depending on where you're operating. So that kind of interaction with them often makes life so much easier. It definitely does.
yeah, well, we got to give a little context too. Adam was talking about the LSISAC, the Legal Services ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And that's what it's about, sharing and analysis. The LS ISAC was a really small one, and it was fairly new and was just getting spun up. But the FS ISAC has been around for a really long time, and it's probably the biggest and definitely one of the most active. I'll tell you, their summits, I think they're twice a year. Oh, you ever been to one of them? They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun.
It's like make it rain.
Yeah. But there is a tremendous amount of sharing, and they offer a lot of resources. And it sounds like from what you're saying, there's even more sharing going on than there was in the past. Because it used to be, when I was in financial services, people in security were pretty tight-lipped, just weren't allowed to talk a lot
I
with
think
our peers or competitors.
I think given that these days every system is interconnected, I mean, with these third party breaches that are happening, supply chain, I think sharing this information is becoming more of a need than, being a luxury that was in the past. A very good example was this CrowdStrike that happened. It wasn't a
yeah.
breach, but it was definitely a downtime issue, right? Just because somebody pushed code that they were not supposed to, and that caused a whole different set of havoc for a lot of trading firms as well. I mean, it kind of wrecked a lot of people's lives as well. People were stuck in airports. People were stuck. anywhere in the world. But here, when it came to high frequency trading firm, a lot of our competitors were down, including us to a certain extent. And we were trying to nail this to understand how are other people doing it? How are you kind of dealing with this? Talking to them constantly, figuring this out with them based on like incident response as we are bringing systems back online, because a lot of trading stuff can happen on Windows machines as well. Those are the ones that were mostly impacted during this downtime.
Yeah, I want to say this though, like I want to be very fair. So much has happened over the last 10 years in our lives, whether there's a last pass compromise or a crowd strike, bricking of machines. People are so quick to judge. Everybody's a Monday morning quarterback. I'm probably gonna get threatened after this, but you know, we got to be fair. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Every company is probably going to suffer some kind of outage. AWS, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're all going to suffer outages. This is just the world we live in. The expectation of 5 nines, which is literally 5 minutes of downtime the whole entire year, it's a hard thing to maintain. It's like running through a highway while cars are going 100 miles an hour. I give a lot of credit to a lot of these companies. I want to give credit. Maybe others won't, but this is, excuse my language, the shit that keeps you up at night. Somebody like you that has to make sure that a trader doesn't come to you, well, I shouldn't even say this, with something in a threatening manner because you put 3 seconds of outage and they lost $62 million. This is a hard world. We're very, very critical of people. Very critical when they can't do their Sudoku or their Tetris or their online gaming or everyone's worried about privacy and about protecting kids. Yes, we should all be, and we can always do a better job. But if unless you're on the inside seeing what's going on, everyone wants you to do more things with less money. They want you to be 100% perfect, never have an issue, never go to the bathroom, never get lunch, and always answer every single phone call in the middle of the night. All right, rant off.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that happen where you kind of do something. It was with one of the previous financial firms I was with. You make a small change that causes a downtime of 5 minutes at best, and the person was just let go that very day.
Yeah,
And all they were trying to do is just updating the firewall or something, right? It isn't supposed to be super duper critical sometimes when you have the right HA pair in place, but on this day for this person, it was just a really bad day that didn't work for them.
Yeah, but I've seen cases where people have gotten fired. In fact, I know of some notable and one famous one where the person wasn't so much fired for making a mistake or getting something wrong. He was fired for doing something outside of process and during the hours he wasn't supposed to do it. And that's one that's hard to defend. It's like when you get pulled over for speeding. You know you were going fast. You know you were breaking the law, but everyone does it. Well, just
but
tell the
Joe,
judge.
something happened to me once where I was doing something for a company, and it wasn't with you. Don't worry. And we were working on some circuits, and I knew that the circuit blipped, and I knew it came back up. What I didn't know was they were monitoring the IP addresses of the both sides, the physical IP addresses. What I didn't know is I took over the organization not more than 2 months after that they weren't monitoring and they were using Microsoft Operations Manager. Do you remember that, Mom? All right.
Wow, that's right.
So and then it became another name. But what I didn't know was that there was an encapsulation, a tunnel that had RFC 1918 or private IP addresses. And that tunnel, even though the physical connection came right back up, the tunnel didn't. And they weren't monitoring the data passing. That's like going into a candy store and saying there's 6,532 pieces of candy. Who's counting every single piece of candy? Who has the time to literally go in and review the thousands and thousands and thousands of things that are being monitored? You have to hope that the people before you we're doing the right job. And yes, it behooves you, and you have a duty to act to make sure everything's being monitored. But how do you know the absence of the delta of something that was never there? You'll know something that's there that's down. You don't know that something was never monitored.
Well, that's why you got to test. You got to try these scenarios and see what
So if
happens,
you're
and you
there
get
2 months
surprises.
and you're trying to fix all the wrongs, you can't fix every wrong that fast.
Well, if you're
Oh,
there
I'm
too
protecting
much and the
myself.
thing is a disaster,
I'm
that's
an
not,
advocate for myself. But go ahead.
I mean,
Well,
indeed.
Jay, let me not get you in trouble. But let me ask you a question. Do you think you're 100% sure of everything that's being monitored and managed perfectly?
I mean, that's like asking, is everything perfect in the world? No.
yeah, Adam, what are
So,
you, a White House reporter or something? I mean, that's an impossible
I
question,
wasn't, but
dude.
I'm
Come
making a point.
on.
We do the best. We had the integrity to do everything we think is right, but we can't be perfect. We're not we're not robots. There's no way to know every single thing. Yes, we go in and we test and we do down and we bring things back up. Sometimes we don't even have the capability of testing every single aspect of something all at the same time. So you might say, let's drop this tunnel, let's bring this tunnel up. Let's drop this hardware, bring the hardware up. Are you going to drop everything to do fail? Except, don't get me wrong, Netflix is pretty good with the Chaos Monkey. I mean, they're really good, but go ahead.
let me give you a story of like one of the breaches that I saw when it came to one of my clients that I was working with. So what happened was I used to work with a person. So what happened was they were like a developer, but also it was a very small organization. So everybody was doing basically everything. So the IT guy was basically just one person or maybe like two at best. So, but it was a big business. It was definitely doing some millions of transactions and whatnot. So what happened was this person, he is a developer, he had every kind of cool detection system on his computer that was supposed to tell him that everything was working fine and everything is working fine. It did, and at the end of the day. What happened was he didn't have any controls when it came to like coding and whatnot. So he actually installed something from a third-party library, and that kind of introduced a malware on his system. He didn't know about it, neither did the control on his machine, because this was coming from a library, right? This is not something that he downloaded, it's just basically a code running on a container. So basically, the malware jumped from his container to his machine locally, and afterwards, since he's a domain admin, he has to log in into a domain controller. So he connected to a domain controller, and the malware got onto that domain controller. And given that domain controllers are like really they replicate each other, right? Every hour or so, depending on the kind of business you operate. This malware basically spread itself on like 10 different domain controllers like within a matter of few seconds. And next thing we know, we were getting all these alerts at that time. We're like, oh, there is an alert coming in. There is a malicious PowerShell script that is trying to do something. Okay, what is that? And but when everybody connects to a domain controller at the end of the day, when they have to log in into a company system, everybody who was logging in got that malware, and they had like small note text pad on their laptop saying that, hey, your files are getting encrypted. They were like, what is happening? We then figured out at the end of the day that this was coming from like something that this person just basically used as a library at the end of the day. So my point being is to your question or to your point, that yes, it's hard to keep track of what is happening in this case, and especially if you don't have the right controls in place, you will always miss something. Always and always and always, yeah.
We can't.
Well,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can tell you though, I mean, hearing that story, and I don't mean to beat anyone up or anything, but I don't want to say it was predictable, but I'm not shocked that given the lack of controls there, that something happened. I mean, those are, sometimes we see things like, oh, it's so subtle, this is tough to find and all these things. And then sometimes we see things where like, we're like, this is an accident waiting to happen, you know?
Yeah, everybody should have PAM. I get it. Privilege escalation. You should never log in with the domain. You should never log in as a domain admin. You should always privilege escalate to that domain admin. You should be going through privilege access management. You should be using detection and prevention. There's a million things, but we don't always get that power to purchase those items. Sometimes people, it's about It's risk versus reward. Look, I'm going to piss Joe off. Watch this, Jay. I figured one of the best things you can have in place was to have a packet inspection, north, south, east,
Oh
west.
God. It's too bad we're not drinking because that's a shot right there. If Adam mentions PISM or packet capture, yeah.
So what I wanted to do was we were working for, I don't want to say the organization, and they had very proprietary and intellectual property. And the problem is, yeah, there's also encapsulation and encryption, but you want to know north south. North south is always the best way to go coming in, but you also want to know east west. So for those who don't know, north south is coming from your higher level internet services down to your organization. East west is going from one network to another network where people move. But
Within your own
within your own domain,
organization, within your own network, yeah.
your own network. So if you're an organization, your corporation, east west is going from your legal computers maybe to your human resource computers, going to your financial computers. But let me just tell you this, Jay. I'm a novice. I'm not smart. We were doing a red team somewhere and a purple team. And what I did was I used a service account and I logged on to the red team's computer and I took their files. And these guys are 50 times smarter than I am. These people are 50 times smarter than me. But at the end of the day, you can't have eyes on everything. They saw a service account. They didn't know type 1 versus type 2. Who's sitting there watching that on your laptop? I took their files, I took their hashes, I might have changed some things. Somebody might have gotten mad at me. I've said this before. I had to go put their files back in place. They didn't know it was me. Someone told them it was me. Whatever. But the point I'm making is you don't have to be smart, but you can't blame these people that might be 50 times better than you because you can't have every single control in place. It's impossible. It's like watching surveillance cameras. If you have
Okay,
100 surveillance cameras in front of you, you're not going to capture everything.
okay. For the record, Adam was kind of cheating because he was one of the reasons they weren't looking for this was because he wasn't supposed to be doing that.
Maybe they should have been looking, Joe.
They should have been looking anyway. That's
Let me tell you
right.
something. Every network is a hostile network. If you're doing reconnaissance, you got to worry about somebody coming after you.
I know, I
That's
think
what that's.
that's a good example. I mean, you can't have controls indeed, but at least what you can do is have visibility, right, of some sort. A very good
Well, you said
example is
civility?
visibility.
Oh, I thought you said
Um,
civility. Because I don't have any civility either. I'm not civil with anybody. Go ahead.
no, no,
sorry, sorry, Jay.
no, no. This situation that I told you, right, where I saw ransomware happening right in front of my eyes just because of the library. The client never had a SIM to begin with. So
Oh,
and that made just things really, really worse. Basically, at that time, that they were only relying on what the intrusion detection prevention system would give them, and that was basically just watching it as a watcher, not doing anything else. And since everything was just falling apart, we had to just go into these systems, look at these systems manually because they were storing them to a certain extent. A lot of times, what was worse was a lot of times what the backup team was doing was they were backing up these systems on the system itself. So when the ransomware hit, how do we recover the system? Well, it's the backup is on the system. Okay, how do you get that? I don't know. So basically, that's why when this kind of things happen, it takes months. For us, it took 3 months because
well,
we barely could see backups anywhere
well.
that.
Look, this is a tough job. Security is tough, and you can find a lot of these subtle things, and it is difficult to sort it out. But you don't have to be a genius to know you shouldn't be putting the backups on the
But
same
but but but
server you're backing
but Joe,
up. My
we've had
God,
these conversations.
seriously.
So these are all tabletop exercises. It's hot, cold, cold, warm, warm, hot, hot, cold, warm, hot, hot, warm. So when you're backing up, are you backing up electronically? Are you backing up, or are you backing up with traditional tapes and stuff? If you're backing up electronically, the systems are connected. Those, what are you gonna do? Air gap the system? Throw like shoot the signal one way, asymmetrically. You're always gonna have some kind of vulnerability. And this is what I've seen over and over again. People are like, oh shit, our warm site is corrupted because it moved. malware moved to where we were backing everything up once a week to over there. I mean, at least back in the old days with that, those tapes, there was always a good tape somewhere because not every tape got infected because it was never there. But as you start backing up online, as you start backing up via, you know, um, some kind of connectivity, there always runs the risk that that malware will get there. Even in air gap systems, malware gets into systems.
Yeah,
So
it
how
can
can
still
they?
do
Yeah,
that.
even in
That's
air
true.
gap systems, you're getting screwed. Somebody's moving from a Bluetooth phone to somebody else's system. Oh shit, let's hop on here. Let's hop on there.
I know, but you got to try. Like I say, some of
I'm
these
not
things are
saying don't
subtle,
try,
they're
Joe, but
complicated, but some of these things are gimmies too.
Joe, I'm not saying give up. I'm just saying that if you throw tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. Even our own government gets it wrong sometimes. Not because they're
Shocking.
horrible, it's because there's so many moving parts. People move from traditional internet into secured networks because they buried themselves all the way through and they found the tunnel. They look for the light. Oh, there it is. It's hard. It's such a hard world. We're all interconnected. My brain is probably connected to my computer now.
Well, Adam, you've been such a bundle of joy today that I'm going to ask Jay to give us the last word as we get to the end here. No, don't say but, and say
I
something that's
guarantee
going
if I
to
ask Jay
send
for
me
a
to the
job,
bar.
he's never hiring me, so it's good.
I mean, a way the way to look at this is again at the end of the day, it's a breach supposed that is going to happen, and when that happens, and you were talking about this, right, that companies are trying to do things for free or like at the minimal cost as much as they can, but that significantly changes when there is a breach. The client I was working for, the security budget like became 10x the year after. Get all the controls that you can, get Splunk, get everything that you can that is the most expensive.
Microsegmentation,
Yeah,
IoT,
we've
DLP,
we've talked
IDS.
about that, and we've talked about that before, saying like sometimes after a company gets breached, they become world class,
Yes.
because they just go out and get everything. You never know.
Jay, check this out, Jay. You're on LinkedIn a lot, right? Okay. What's one of the things that you see on LinkedIn that's really disturbing? I'm trying to lead you to this. I'm going to say it. I see so many people begging for jobs. There's no cybersecurity jobs out there. How can there be no cybersecurity jobs out there when these places are getting breached and everything else? And here's one thing that's really upsetting. And I'm a sucker. I've seen more than one person online. You see me for the last 8 months. Look at my feed. I've been looking for a job. I'm becoming homeless. Can people send me 20, $30 because I'm gonna get I'm gonna get thrown out of my home? How is that possible that all these cybersecurity people, some people that really came from really good companies, can't get jobs? So the point I'm making is we talk about all these companies putting in these security practices in place, but nobody's hiring.
No, that is true. And thanks to all these vendors out there that are like, I mean, I think that's kind of an innovation in a way, if you think about it, that are introducing the quote unquote AI or machine learning onto their toolings. Um, a lot of there is a bit of a misconception that, hey, if I get this tool that has this new AI capabilities, that is going to just cut down the workforce that I have by like 1% or 2%. I think we have seen that happen with a lot of firms out there. And this is the big brunt of it is something that a lot of graduates are coming out these days. Because since you basically don't have much of an experience, and since a lot of these firms are automatically doing like some level of entry level job because of these new AI capabilities, people are not able to get a job because of that. And I think I've seen that happen more and more with security these days. I mean, yes, indeed, I mean, I've seen a lot of even certification based organizations like IC2 and whatnot who say, yes, there is a lot of demand for security. But if I were to indeed, like you said, go out and actually see LinkedIn, yeah, it breaks my heart. It kind of makes me scared as well. Okay, so say if I have to look for a job tomorrow, how is that going to look like for me? Even though I can basically do a lot of these stuff, a lot of people are talking about these days, GPU clusters, AI and whatnot. I've been part of that, but still, it's scary out there.
Wow. Well, both of you seem determined to take us out on a downer here. So I'm
Why do you
gonna have
think I
to.
finished this, Joe?
Oh God, yeah. What's in that? So I'm gonna have to take matters into my own hands and say, at least, Jay, you mentioned AI a couple times, and that's great for the SEO. So
I was
thank you
just
so
going to say that,
much.
yeah, the
That's good
SEO.
for us. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And we can come back and do a whole other show on that. Yeah, the hiring situation is crazy.
A lot of these high frequency trading firms are hiring a lot. So I'm sure they might be hiring a lot of security folks as well because these days markets are super volatile. So that's what happens when the markets are super volatile. High frequency trading firms make a lot of money because everybody's buying, everybody's selling, and based on that, they're generating revenue on top of that. So even though I say that the future is bleak, at least some part of it isn't fully bleak. So there is
Yeah.
revenue. If there is revenue, that means there will be hiring, and there will be like fully equipped teams.
I don't
And
think
we'll
you,
be posting Jay's email address on our website, so you can contact him
I
with
don't
your
think it's that
resume.
bleak. I mean, I know I said a lot of things, guys. I said a lot of things, and I know there's a lot going on. But yes, you know, um, as people might have known, we've done a lot of shows with recruiters, and we speak to recruiters a lot. And the recruiters are saying that yes, that we're on our third year of hiring issues. But I do think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I do think there's a lot of move to technology that we weren't doing before. Ironically, my son, he had this mining rig. And I said, let me go sell the mining rig. It actually got delivered today. But we no longer do mining because of proof of stake versus proof of work. But what we didn't know is that these mining rigs are being converted into AI farms. So people are taking the same NVIDIA, even the older cards, the 3090s and stuff, and they're using these NVIDIA cards to create their own AI. So, yes, while some things traditionally I have not been hiring for, there is still a lot of AI to learn. And even though they say AI are taking jobs, there's still a lot of people. I mean, the big people that were hiring for AI, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg. He was paying them like sports recruiters, sports salaries. 30 million, 5 years.
Well,
Sign-on
not
bonus.
everyone. You're talking about like five
No,
or
I know
six
it's selective,
guys,
but but but
getting that
but
kind
but
of money.
everybody wants to become that major league baseball player, that NFL football player. So I'm saying you could still have that. You couldn't do that 10 years ago, Joe. You couldn't be paid like a sports player, but nowadays you can. So my point I'm making is there is some positivity there. Become a Division 1 sports person in AI, and then move into the big leagues.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it at that before you say anything depressing again. But Jay, thanks so much for joining. This did not go where I thought it was going to go with everything that's going on. So it shows you what I know. So thanks for coming on and giving us some new info.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad I was able to talk to you guys. Really able to share what I know. I'm sure you guys definitely know still a lot more. But yeah, at least I'm glad I'm able to share the ins and outs of like how high frequency trading firms work, and at least based on my experiences with breaches and whatnot, I'm able to share and at least share my 2 cents that a lot of people may not have seen before. So I'm glad and I'm thankful. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you for coming on. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. We love our audience.
Like,
Right,
subscribe,
Adam?
comment,